Welcome back to another episode of Status Update, the creator-led podcast that you can listen to at work because it is a work podcast. I'm Stevie Johnson, Managing Director of Disrupt.
And I'm Jake Crabb, Marketing Manager at that very same influencer marketing agency, Disrupt, and the voice of Gen Z. Now, joining us in the studio today is CEO and co-founder of CoLab X. He's been responsible for some of the most viral branded content moments on social media. It's Matt Ford.
And you want to get them to the place where the brand is involved, where the brand appears, where that brand value is coming in and all of that stuff. And that's the beauty of branded content, because you are able to do that via the story. And if you can weave a brand in naturally, then perfect.
And in today's episode, we want to answer the question, what role does branded content play in today's performance-obsessed digital landscape? So why don't we go and get Matt from the green room and see if we can answer that for you. Matt,
Hi.
Thanks very much for joining us. As always, the dreaded question from a hat section at the start is how we're going to kick things off, which we spoke a little bit just now off camera.
Yeah.
Jake hasn't seemed to have picked a serious question that I've written for him yet.
No.
The guests seem to get the serious questions. They tend to ask the ones that I've asked Jake, but every single one you've got from me has been a more joke.
Yeah, well, a joke, or I end up having to sing.
Yeah, okay.
Which was a bit embarrassing.
At least you sing, not the guest singing. That's probably.
Well, you never know what's going to come out of the hat.
Right, okay, I'm intrigued.
Right, so you're picking out of my hat to begin, yeah?
Do you want me to go first?
You go first this time, I think.
I feel a lot of pressure when it gets to this, because what if it's a question I can't answer?
Well, I've had that a few times.
What is the rudest celebrity you've encountered? This is quite a good one, actually. Yeah. The rudest celebrity I've encountered, I actually know. Just always like, should I say this?
Yeah, go on, say it. Views.
Jimmy Carr.
Really?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
okay.
I bumped into him in New York, and I was out there filming Made in Chelsea. If you don't know, Matt, I used to film Made in Chelsea back at the beginning, many moons ago.
Okay.
And we were doing a series in New York, and Ollie Proudlock and I crossed the road to 7-Eleven to pick up some beers, and with people coming around to watch the football at ours, and Jimmy Carr was in there, and we were like, oh my gosh, amazing. What a legend, funny guy. Maybe he knows who we are. Anyway, we went up to him, we're like, Jimmy, how are you? And he was like, oh gosh, yeah, fine, thanks. What do you want? Okay. And we were like, what are you doing? Over in America, like we're fellow Brits abroad. And he was like, not much, blah, blah, like just quite short with his answers. And we were like, okay, well, are you going to be watching the football later on? And he was like, no, God, no, I've come all this way to escape all of that. And we're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, can we get a photo with you? And he was like, yeah, if you have to, let's make it quick. So we go to put our arms around him as you do when you have a photo. And he was like, can you not touch me?
Don't touch me.
That's it. So we're there, like me and Proudlock, with our arms like hovering.
Hover hand.
Jimmy Carr.
No.
How awkward. Have you got photo evidence of that?
I don't have it on my phone. I'm sure I can dig it out.
I think we should try and source it and put it on screen now.
For a status update.
Yeah. So that's one that springs to mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I had a good answer to that, I think.
Ruins my dreams of getting Jimmy on the podcast, but hey.
Yeah, I don't think he'll want to come on after that.
Cool. Right.
All right. So
moving on. Good answer.
Okay.
Just put the specs on so I can read this.
I've only got a few more of these because the guest always tends to choose from my hat as well.
That's very true. Right. Do you mind reading that for me? Sorry, I can't read.
What is an example of bad influence from a creator?
What is an example of bad influence from a creator? In my eyes, an example of bad influence is an inauthentic partnership between brand and creator. I think audiences now are pretty savvy to when a creator is working with a brand for a quick payday. And yeah, I think, it's a buzzword that's thrown around so much in our industry. And Matt, I'm sure we'll get onto it with you as well.
Yep.
But authenticity is kind of name of the game today. And, I think a lot of these creators that come off reality TV shows, no offense, they sometimes chase a quick buck rather than making content for their community.
You trying to say I chased a quick buck?
Listen, mate, I'm not saying anything, but, I'm not saying anything.
There's no money in podcasting.
Yeah, exactly. Matt, you've got a choice. You can choose a question I've written for Jake from my hat, or a question that Jake's written for me from his hat.
I kind of want to go for that hat, just because
I think that's the first time.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I'm going to regret this, but let's see.
I feel like Jake's questions are normally quite serious. So.
Are they?
No.
What is something random that you can't live without? Geez, yeah. I mean, there's probably loads of things, right? That's hot sauce.
Yes,
I would say
a good
is
answer.
probably the thing that came to my mind immediately.
Okay.
I'll have it on everything. Like if I have a soup, I'll have it on that. Sandwiches, pasta.
What's your favourite
pizza?
I was going to say, are we talking like Frank's Red Hot, or are we going like Da Bomb?
I live near a Tesco Metro, so
Right.
yeah, I'm kind of at the the behest of what they stock.
Yeah.
So Tabasco original is the one that I would usually go for. That's the one that's always in my cupboard. But every Christmas and birthday, because my birthday is on Christmas Day, I get loads of hot sauce.
Yeah.
Because
And you're
people
probably-
just buy
and
me
you're
hot
probably
sauce.
like,
So
perfect.
they'll go
That's
to
actually
like
all I want.
Exactly. So I'm really easy to buy for. Different strengths, doesn't really matter. Not silly hot, because that's not enjoyable.
Yeah.
But if someone will go to like a craft hot sauce place, or they make loads of hot sauce down in Dartmoor.
Yeah.
Someone visits there on holiday. I'll buy that for Matt for his
We
birthday.
need to
So-
catch up off camera about some of this. I love
Yeah,
some hot
yeah.
sauce.
That was
hot sauce
I
as
was
well.
I was expecting that to be a little bit more dark.
What's the
but it was-
weirdest thing? What's the weirdest thing you put hot sauce on? If there can be anything weird to put hot sauce on.
I think hot sauce on cereal would be pretty weird.
Yeah, that is
but
weird. I
I
don't
bet-
go that far. I
How
wouldn't
far
have
do you
it
go?
first thing in the morning, but
Not
it's
with some
like,
eggs?
yeah, have it on eggs.
Yeah, first
So
thing
I'd
in the
have-
morning.
Well, that's true, actually. Yeah, you got me there.
Matt, great response. We're all bonding over hot sauce already, which is
There you go.
fantastic.
Yeah.
In addition to that now, a way that we, again, like to break the ice with our guests is in line with the name of the podcast, Status Update, is asking you whether you can recount a status that you first made when you were initially using social media like Facebook, etc., that you look back on now and cringe.
Do you know, I do remember what I used to use it for. I don't really cringe at it, though, because I just think actually I just had a very particular way of what I would use this network for.
Yeah.
And that was sourcing gig tickets or selling
Right.
gig tickets
Yeah.
or festival tickets. So if I've ever needed tickets to Lovebox or Glastonbury or something like that, then that would go into my status update.
Okay, and were you successful then?
Always. That's why I did
Right.
it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can go back now and you can search on Facebook, can't you? You can search for your own posts in a certain amount of time. So you can quite easily find this stuff. So I went back and had a quick look and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did sell those Soul Wax tickets that
That's
Christmas.
good.
Or yeah.
And
So,
in-
I'm
innovator early
assuming
on.
that was through joining groups and
No.
communities, just
no.
purely by status.
Purely status update.
So
the
just
old
your
school
friends,
original Facebook status update,
Yeah.
whatever year that was,
Yeah.
2010. I'm a little bit older than you guys, 2010, 2011.
about that time,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's what I used it for.
Fair play.
An innovator early doors. Well, now you know. I know you're desperate for Taylor Swift tickets this summer. So maybe if you update your
There you go.
status,
That's it.
you'll
Yeah.
be able to.
Yeah.
You got a spare
I'm-
300
I'm
quid?
I'm a total Swiftie. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, that's such an iconic first use really of social media and being able to do it. We've got stories about embarrassing statuses, and you're there being like, no, I was sourcing tickets, I was making money.
I was making money,
doing
yeah,
all this
exactly.
Business
stuff.
from day
I was
one,
exactly
mate.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
never like Matt Ford is hungry or Matt Ford is emotional. It was Matt Ford is looking for tickets for.
Trying to make some cash. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Matt, I mean, what a start already, and we're so happy and excited to have you on. I think the next 20 minutes, half an hour, or however long we have together is going to be really fascinating to hear more about what you do and how it aligns with some of our work at Disrupt as well. Branded content, that's a big thing that you're involved in at the moment. And without wanting to sound naive, but maybe for our listener, how does branded content differ from regular content marketing, influencer marketing, and so on?
That's a great question, and one that is probably more blurred now than ever before because of creators and influencers.
Yeah.
If we go back 10 years, 2015 time, so nine years, when branded content on social didn't exist, and this was when I just started at Unilad at the time.
Yeah.
It was Unilad, it was Lab Bible, it was BuzzFeed, big Facebook pages. You had all the YouTubers doing their YouTube stuff, but as publishers and media owners, they were the ones that were really hitting mass audiences consistently with UGC content.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. It was very much, and this is kind of like my approach to branded content, is that it's got to be authentic, right? Like we talked earlier on, we said earlier on. So what are people consuming at that time? And then that becomes branded content. You go to a brand, you know that at that time on Facebook it was UGC content. So okay, Warner Brothers, we did our first campaign with them. You know, we can create a piece of branded content for you in this style that we know will reach millions of people, because we already know that's what they're consuming. So what is it you're looking to do at the moment is, okay, you're looking to promote a film, we'll recreate a viral moment or UGC piece of content in that same style to promote your film. That was then. It's kind of moved on quite a lot since then. You know, the social publishers built businesses off the back of their branded content offerings, earning, you know, millions and if not tens of millions a year off of that. And then the market evolved, right? And it got bigger and broader, and bigger players came into it. Yeah. Channel 4 being one, when I went over to Channel 4 and set up for studio commercially there, which was a big branded content play for them. And then you've got editorially led commissioned content, that stamp of approval and the quality it perceived to go up. And you've got longer form stuff that is effectively like something that Channel 4 would commission anyway, funded by a brand that has brand involvement in it. Nowadays, it's shifted, and you guys will know this better than anyone. Creators are working with brands, whether it's branded content, whether it's influencer marketing, whether it's product placement, whatever it might be. It's quite blurred. Branded content for me traditionally has been, I guess, like longer form content on YouTube, sort of 15, 20 minute episodic type stuff, where you weave the brand in, you tell that you align with a specific purpose or vision or message or whatever, and you weave them in naturally. I think it depends on on the platform. So you've got to be flexible in your approach. If you're a media owner or a publisher, you have to understand how the platforms work and make that branded content proposition specific to platform. If you're a creator, it's the same.
I mean, I feel like I could have kept listening to you answer that question, because it's clearly something that's been on such a journey. As you know, from what I gather from that, branded content is about perfecting that art of storytelling. And am I right in thinking it's not necessarily directly selling that product or service in the
100%.
content?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Because then it becomes advertising.
Yeah.
And then it's, then it's a very different thing. And that's why product launches or product selling doesn't always make the best reason to do branded content. If you have a specific purpose, like you want to, tell your story about what you're doing for sustainability or whatever it might be, or you support a specific cause, or you have intrinsic values as a brand that you want to get across within storytelling, that's what branded content would be used for. It doesn't come without its, I guess, commercial benefits from a sales point of view. And an ROI perspective, because if you deliver a really good brand film or brand series, and you build a big audience, you can retarget that audience with more direct messaging from that same campaign. So you've got consistency there. So you might, I remember we did this thing with Adidas when I was at Unilad, where it was it was a launch of a shoe, it was a running shoe, and we just we did that thing where you shoot people running through London, and it was like that type of, but it was all about the stories about their journey they'd been on and where they were going, their achievements and that type of thing. But the shoe featured quite heavily in it, so we shot it, released it, put it out as a branded content piece, and then we took 15 seconds of that and put that out as paid ads. And then there's your call to action, there's your ROI, then you can start measurement. You can put and then this was back in the day when you could do product carousels on Facebook and click directly to buy the shoe and stuff. So you can directly measure. But that came from, we know 2.5 million people watched it. We'll retarget them with this ad to buy the shoe because they've already watched this.
There's so much clarity already in that, because Jake and I, we catch up before every podcast that we do, and we look at the guests that we're getting on, and we talk about specific questions we want answering, what intrigues us about what this individual can talk about. And for you, Matt, I think one of the things that we're interested in hearing more around was that kind of commercial take, right? So nowadays it's 2024, tangible metrics, tangible results seem to be all the rage now. A lot of briefs that we get through at Disrupt, you've got procurement managers, you've got CMOs, and they want to see that specific ROI, those tangible results there. And for branded content that focuses more on that storytelling, like what role can that play nowadays in more of those performance generated aspects?
Well, at the heart of branded content is production. So if you're producing content, you can create anything. So that's why it becomes more of a 360 campaign, a 360 approach to what it is. So I guess, and this is a journey that branded content has gone on over the last however many years, 9 years, to be able to get to this role, to this place within the marketing mix, I guess. So the way that we approach it now is that the branded content piece, that's your brand element. that will raise awareness, that will tell your story, that will, you know, if you're aligning with a talent or creator, you want to get that across as almost like an endorsement or ambassadorship or something like that, a rubber stamp of approval. But if it's, you know, but actually at the end of the day, you want people to watch it like they would watch anything else that's not branded content. That's that part of it. But you can create all these other assets. So the social ads we just talked about, but you can shoot out of home stuff, you can shoot a linear ad, you can just do a podcast or audio ads off the back of it. You can do so much stuff once you have that production. So we always say, you know, you probably hear this all the time, sweat the assets.
Yeah.
So where's this going to live? We don't think it's going to be one piece of content that lives on one person's YouTube channel. It runs once and that's it and it's done. It's not about that. It's about actually, you know, let's create this story and let's build the campaign around that story. It doesn't, that doesn't become more expensive because you just, you know, you're already producing the content. Then it's a case of where do you want this to go? Who are you trying to reach? Who's your audience? Do you want it to live on underground outdoor tube ads? So people can see it while they're waiting for a tube, and they've just watched it.
It's something that I've often said in the past to clients of ours is something that's overlooked if we focus more on like the creator economy and influence marketing now is when we're running campaigns is the rights that the client or brand has to those assets. I feel like are still massively underused.
100%.
Even if we're just doing kind of standard rights that they can repurpose things organically, like nothing's happening with it. And there's a whole bank of assets that can form part of that content marketing strategy that just seems to be overlooked a lot of the time. So when it comes to branded content, you know, ultimately, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is this something that it sits at the top of the funnel, but ultimately can impact then purchasing decisions further down?
Yes.
And everything like that.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly that. And then if you're a media owner doing branded content, and you feature talent or creators within it, which is often what happens because that's how they sell these deals, then, you know, it's a way of carving out what else you can do on the talent and creator platforms as part of that same campaign. I think where the industry should probably move on a little bit and understand that the brand is funding this content. So rights of that content you should be flexible on the rights for that content, because it's probably going to be more aligned with what they want to do, especially if they're paying for it, than what a media owner or a talent or creator wants to do because they're in it. You know, it's running on their channel. So I think that traditionally and my world's a lot more media owner side more than like talent and creators. That's kind of come later for me, but my history, my background has been on that side of it, on the media owner side. Giving brands ownership of that content and allowing them to do what they want with it is obviously a lot more attractive to the brand.
Definitely. A lot more expensive.
A lot more expensive. But then you have the conversation around, you know, rights and licensing and all of that stuff. But if you go in, and this is what we do at CoLab, if you go in with that model of, well, it's going to live on the talent and creator channel, it's going to live on the brand channel, out of all of this content that we're creating, what is it that you would want? And then you create a bespoke licensing package around that. You view it with, you know, it's got to be flexible. Rather than kind of controlling it, and because nobody wins. Nobody wins.
Nobody wins. And are you going to jump in with something?
I was going to ask, like, when you're working with brands, obviously like they have brand, it's their ownership, they're the ones funding it. How often, if you're like working with a brand for the first time, do you have to like talk them down from perhaps like a grandiose idea of a massive campaign that they want, but they've never done it before? So you have to kind of say, look, we need to kind of build equity with it first, start slowly. I mean, how often do you have to have that kind of discussion?
I wish I had it. I wish I had it more, to be honest, because I feel like you kind of have to build them up, rather than build them down at the moment, or bring them down. I mean, I think that is the gold standard, really, is to kind of have those conversations around how big this could possibly go and how much you can get out of it, but understand that it's very cost effective to do that, because producing content on digital, social, working with creators, when you compare it to the working with celebs and TV, it's very cost effective, and you can reach more people, and it's also more measurable. You know how many people have watched it, how many people have engaged with it. You can go really deep into the numbers and the performance, and you know, this is a performance of actually ROI and like products sold and stuff, because once you start doing paid, when you bring paid into it, all of those other metrics come into it as well, and then you can track and measure all of that stuff. So the wealth of data that you've got at your hand, so your fingertips.
But that must have been quite an evolutionary thing, though, coming into like the digital realm and having those tangible results. I imagine when it was branded content that's purely like from an out of home perspective, like you
don't have it.
You don't have it, do you?
You don't have it, exactly. And also, before I joined Unilad in 2015, I was working in digital advertising.
Okay.
But programmatic advertising, and then I worked at Trinity Mirror, doing branded content and digital advertising and print advertising then as like a full package. So it was difficult to measure in traditional means. It's still difficult to measure in traditional means.
How, and again, excuse my naivety here, I'm someone that comes from a television background, then straight into social and digital. What were those means of measurement previously?
Well, so if you think about a newspaper,
yeah,
you've got circulation, and readership, but
yeah.
you don't know who's looked at that piece of content
It's
on
like
that
a- it's
specific
like a
page.
It's like a billboard.
Is it not?
Yeah.
It's estimated figures, isn't it, based on population?
Yeah,
Or am
I think. Yeah, I
way
mean,
off the mark?
my memory's terrible as well. So
We're all stumped.
we'll just guess it. But I mean, the circulation and readership. So I can't remember what the exact numbers were, but if there was 1 million sold, 3 million people would read it, something like that.
Okay.
But that's the paper.
Yeah.
And you might be a sports fan, so you only read the back pages. You might look at the headline, and that's all you read. But to turn over to page 26 and read an ad feature that's a double page spread on the piece of branded content, how do you know, right? You can't measure that. On TV, it's barb data, so it's however many boxes there are, and then people are estimated watching. At that time, they extrapolate it out over the rest of the, you know this better than most, across the UK. But so that how many actual people have watched it? You rely on barb data, which is obviously the metric in TV world. But on social, you know the exact amount of people who've watched it for exactly that amount of time, how many engagements, in what way that have they engaged, have they liked it, have they commented it, have they shared it. And then when you get into paid, then you know how many people have clicked, how many people have converted, how many people have bought, how many people are you tracking when you put pixel tracking on it. It's like all of this stuff. So you have all of that measurement at your fingertips. And that's that's why branded content's so interesting, because you align it with almost like digital ad buying. You definitely sell it in that way.
Yeah.
Because you sell it in the way that the platforms sell their ads.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's editorial content. I won't name names, but media owners and publishers will sell on the same way that a platform sells, which is either a view or an impression.
Yeah.
But a view could be 3 seconds, depending on the platform. It could be it could be no seconds if it's a click to play. Whereas you might have made them a 45-minute video.
Yeah.
But you're not selling on view through rate or watch time or anything like that. You'd sell on the amount of people who have viewed it, or even the amount of people who've been served an impression to view it. And that for me is just not valuable. If you're selling video content, no matter how long it is, then an impression is not a valuable way of measuring or selling it.
No, especially for branded content. Again, just to bring it back to the storytelling aspect, if you're delivering content for brands like it is a 45-minute video, knowing how many impressions is kind of irrelevant, because you want to know how many people have watched the narrative of what you're trying to sell of the brand.
And you want to get them to the place where the brand is involved, where the brand appears, where that brand value is coming in and all of that stuff. And that's the beauty of branded content, because you are able to do that via the story. And if you can weave a brand in naturally, then perfect. We did this thing at Channel 4 for Volvo, which was the launch of their new XC40, I think.
Yeah, nice. I like the XC car. I actually want one. You're a family man now.
Family man, exactly. You've got to get one. That's going to be my next one as
Volvo,
well.
if you're listening.
Yeah. And the whole thing was shot in an XC40 in a Volvo, but because the format itself was comedians talking to kids in cars, that was a very it's lovely format. It was did really well. Kids say the funniest things, they ask silly questions, but it was all shot in an XC40. So the whole thing, I can't remember how long it was, 10-12 minutes probably, was basically a 10-12 minute Volvo ad, but it was fairly soft branding. The car featured in it for the whole time. And then at the end of it, there was like a piece to camera that Ellie Taylor, the comedian, did, where she was stood charging.
Right.
And then she did like an intro and an outro, and that was it. So the car featured the whole way through. And it was like, to watch it was hilarious, because it wasn't about the car. It's about the journey and the kids saying
it's all about show don't tell, isn't it, really? I think brands that I enjoy watching, I think do that so well, are brands like Nike, obviously, Gymshark, and it's not about the product, it's about this is what the story, this is what you should be doing in the gym, this is what you can do as a golfer.
Well, Patagonia do really good stuff.
Yeah,
because they do some really long form, climbing documentaries and stuff. And it's just because if you're into that and you watch that and it looks amazing, it's beautifully shot, but they're all obviously head to toe in Patagonia, but they're there to watch this guy just climb this massive mountain. And it's that's the content.
Yeah, I think definitely now we're obviously, I don't want to move the discussion into generative AI, but with the rise of content being made through AI, there's definitely an importance to lean into thought-provoking first-person narratives for this content in order to build more credibility for a brand moving forward as well. I know that there's obviously, with Google SGE launching at some point in the UK, there is that requirement in order to rank more highly for some of that first person storytelling to really come to the fore. So I find that really interesting. I mean, Jake, you've spoken about brands that you like that are doing the branded content piece really well. Matt, are there any brands that you think have like got it really wrong, or any mistakes that you can share with us that you've seen out there? A brand trying to do it?
I don't really want to name names of this stuff. But
it's a safe space if you want to name names.
I think I can think of an example which I think I saw you share recently on LinkedIn.
Which one?
Pepsi.
Yeah. That's the obvious one, isn't it? Yeah. And that was going back a few years ago. But I think, that one in particular was just so tone deaf.
It was.
And I think everybody would probably remember exactly almost like where you were when you first saw it.
For clarification, sorry, we should just say it's the Pepsi advert with Kendall Jenner, Police Riots.
Yes.
Yeah. For anyone who was wondering what we're talking about. But you're right, it's like, there was even an SNL skit made about it. It's just, it was one of the most tone deaf ads or pieces of content I've seen, because like you say, super sensitive time to release something like that anyway. And then throwing a Kardashian or a Jenner in whatever just probably didn't help with the message.
I know there's a question that I want to know, but I know it was something when we discussed that you were keen to ask about brand IP creators.
Yeah, so obviously, a lot of creators now are kind of transcending beyond their social media channels, and they're starting to build their own kind of IP. I think the most popular one's probably podcasting. Podcasting's become really popular.
Yeah,
I know that you said you work with the creators and stuff is quite new to you, but like, how do you navigate that when you're working with a creator in terms of like trying to guide them and be like, look, we know that you're your brand, but for an IP, a kind of a product owned by you, it needs to work a little bit differently.
I guess firstly, yes, I'm starting to work with creators more in a new way on their own platforms, their own channels, because they're so big now on their own platforms, their own channels. Whereas previously I would work with creators and put them in our content that we were doing. So they've moved from like an appearance fee into actually we can do this ourselves. And because we're going to do this ourselves, the reason that a brand comes to us is because we have that audience, right? We have that authenticity, we have that credibility in this space. Therefore, the IP conversation never really came up before, right? Because it's just like, I'm just going to book you into this campaign, you're going to be part of it, and then
this
that's
it. This is what we're paying you for.
We're paying you for. You come for a couple of days.
Great,
Exactly. Now, because it's going on their channels, they absolutely should be having that conversation. And I think it depends on what it is. If it's product IP we're talking about here, or if it's content IP, because they're different. But content can build the product.
Yeah.
So if the brand does a collaboration with a creator, but they launch this product that they've done together via content, then they're doing it because they're going to get audience from the creator platforms and creator channels, and that audience is going to come there. Whereas if it's purely just as a content pit play only, and it just lives on the creator channel, then I think that there's probably more of a 50-50 conversation around ownership of the IP of that content, because how far is it going to go?
Yeah.
Right. What's going to happen afterwards? Is it a one-off campaign that will go anywhere else, or is it not? If they're moving into, like you say, into podcasting, then that just becomes a brand sponsorship conversation, doesn't it? And the creator owns 100% of that IP because they've come up with the idea. Who's going to fund the production of it? Are they self-shooting it? Is it all funded by themselves? Then it's going to be that. So I think IP is a really hot topic. Hot ones, that we were talking about earlier on, right? That's an amazing example of product IP born out of content.
Yeah,
which everyone is like, well, how do we get that? How do we build that? That's one way of doing it. Content IP, we could do some content together that then I could just own that IP and distribute it around the world. I could sell it to a streamer or a broadcaster or someone else who could pick that up and run it as its own thing. I could set up my own podcast. So I think it depends on how you carve out IP and what it actually means to.
Have you had conversations with the client work that you're doing? Have you dealt directly with talent agents with regards to conversations like this? I'd be interested, I'm sure. And if there are any talent agents listening or watching, please do send in your thoughts and comments on this, because yeah, I can imagine it can be difficult conversations at times, right? We find it with just kind of, the odd simple influencer contract for a branded campaign, but I can imagine when you're going deeper into IP, then the conversations can get a little bit differently from a brand perspective versus talent perspective.
Yeah. I just, we do, and we speak, and my business partner, Mariam, she is, IP is her world.
Great.
She has built IP brands from nothing into, sort of like 7-figure, 8-figure brands now over time, talent fronted brands, which is incredible. But the ones that do it really well that we work with are the ones that are really flexible. The ones that they have these big followings, they have these big audiences, they already know that they want to, leverage, I guess, their fame or their audience, but they aren't the experts in creating and delivering whatever this might be. So, the Sidemen do this really well with all of their products that they've launched. And they're obviously killing it, massive, but they're very open to the fact that, well, we know that we physically can't do this ourselves, so we'll go and partner with someone who can actually manufacture a cereal or a beef jerky or a card game or whatever. Okay, so we'll do it. Go and and they're very collaborative in that way, and it's just it becomes a lot more of a partnership than one person having more power or control than the other. So they're the way their approach is bang on, and that's why they succeed and do so well with what they do. I think when the creator and or brand, either party, wants the majority and is really, going all out to get that majority, it's not the best start to that relationship, is it? Because it doesn't become almost, are we actually in it together, or are you just going to license something from me to sell more product? So I think you've got to have that kind of,
definitely. And I think, element. A lot of the work that we do at Disrupt now, and I think this over time it will change, but a lot of the campaigns that we're running are obviously brand focused, right? And we bring talent on board in order to create content around the key narratives, the product, the service, and so on. But over time, and going back to Jake, your original point, that creators building their own brands now is something that's really picking up pace, and I think will continue to be like a key trend in the creator economy over the next few years. And it sounds like, from your perspective, the advice is to be, for a creator is basically don't look at that whole 100% ownership model for it, where you're trying to do something yourself. Find something you're passionate about, but find people that can deliver that for you. Where if they want to be like, the main player in it, they're still gonna have to give up some of that.
Some of it, exactly, absolutely. And some of it, not all of it, not the majority, but some of it, to have experts that know what they're doing in that space to build that brand for you on your behalf. But as you say, you nailed it there with the passion element of it, because if you go into it without believing in it or being that interested in it, and you are just, it could be just, I might try my hand at selling t-shirts, see how I get on. This company really wants to sell some t-shirts. They'll design it, they'll like do the distribution, they'll sell them, they'll set the price, all of that stuff. They'll just pay me a fee at the end of each month. If you're not in it, then that's not, it's not going to be successful. I
had interesting experience, slightly different. This was before like the real digital age, but when I was on, and I promise on this podcast, I don't always talk about when I was on TV. In fact, I rarely do.
Just my one then.
I know I do. I rarely do it. But I remember being 23 when I was on Made in Chelsea, and I'd worked in finance, and then I was still young, and I started doing the show, and I had some of the older guys on the show that had their own fashion companies or whatever it was, and people always used to say to me like, "Well, what are you going to do? Why don't you set up like a t-shirt company? Like, why don't you do socks or anything like that?" And for me, I could never get my head around the fact why I would just Stevie's or pocket squares. But I could never get my head around the fact that I should just think of something that I could make a brand and try and monetize it because I was on TV. For me, it just didn't make any sense. Like, sure, it could have been a quick buck to be earned, but I felt quite bad and guilty being a young person that my day to day wasn't, I'm setting up my fashion line or I'm going to create a drinks brand, because it was quite a confusing time for me. But I always had a feeling that I was like, I need to find something that I'm passionate about, that I want to work on long term. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I was taking everything in across social media and the birth of Creator, and now it's kind of transformed into this. But yeah, I could for me, I just never understood why you would just create a brand to try and flog it. And I don't know, what would you create if you were If you suddenly had 100,000 followers on Instagram or 1 million followers on Instagram, what would your brand go-to brand be if you wanted to do it?
I don't know. I'd probably I think I'm a big hat wearer, so like maybe like a cool line of hats. Like we were having a conversation before the camera started rolling about what was the brand called again?
Amy Leon Dore.
Amy Leon Dore, yeah, some cool hats. I've not seen them yet, but I might get them. So maybe like hats, or do you know what actually I'd create is I might need a few scientists to help me with this, but a glasses cleaner that is 100% effective all the time and consistent, because this is just backing off a moan I was having last night with one of my friends about how much I hate cleaning my glasses. Sorry, this conversation has really gone off a tangent.
There's a real need for this though, clearly. This is good.
I would want a product that just keeps your glasses clean forever. God, that's such a dead answer, isn't it? I feel like your mission on this podcast is just to embarrass me.
No, but basically, so I look at things from a slightly older perspective than Jake. You know, not as old as you, Matt. I'm 35. Yeah. You're 30.
42.
42.
Yeah.
So I thought you were 30s. Yeah. Anyway, but Jake, you're Gen Z, and I think it's always important to get your input on certain things that I might think about differently.
Yeah, well, I don't think that answer was very Gen Z.
No.
I got like glasses cleaner.
Yeah, I can see that on Dragon's Den though. Can you? I can see that pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we can move on from it now. But
I'll ask people around the office when I get back later, and then I'll relay that on the next podcast.
I think though, to your point, it's if you have 100,000 followers or 1 million followers, why have you got them?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What's your content? Why are they following you?
Yeah, exactly.
Why are they watching you? What's authentic to you?
Exactly.
As you, which is why they engage with you, why they like you, why they watch you, etc. And then what's the brand that if you wanted to build a brand, you take that insight and build off the back of that, rather than go, I've got 1 million followers because I don't know, whatever.
Well, I think
got an entertainment channel.
Yeah, I think this is, you know, a reason why we're seeing a big rise in B2B influence at the moment in what we do is because the creators are building audiences due to a genuine passion or expertise in a certain area. Yeah, I don't really think there's much of a trend at the minute of those B2B influencers setting up their own products, but they kind of do come with their own brand anyway.
Are they? Do you find them doing a lot of more coaching, education? Not courses, mentorship, stuff like that, and then that's how they set up a business. But it's still them. Yeah, but their product is them.
Yeah, I think it is because B2B influencing kind of goes up beyond social media. It can kind of be like in person, you know, toolbox talks or whatever. Like as you say, public speaking. Yeah. So I think it does. They become the company sort of thing. They become the brand. Yeah. Which isn't really. Is it B2C? I don't know. What do you think?
The lines are blurring.
It's so blurred,
and B2C with regards to it. I think, to go back to your point, Matt, is the question, are we seeing those types of B2B influencers as being people that are coaches initially? I think there's definitely an increase in that, but I also feel like with a lot of the B2C influencers nowadays, people that have got that big following that have set up their own companies and the experience they're getting from doing that, whether it's them on their own or having to hire other people, then that shift to B2B happens a lot more because people can talk about, you know, personal branding or what it takes to set up your own finance operation within a new company, which you can't necessarily do if you're just a B2C influencer. Yeah. If that makes sense. You know, if I take my own personal like experience with this, and I don't, you know, I've got hundreds of thousands of followers, but I don't consider myself a traditional influencer as such. But if I wanted to start creating content around my day-to-day life now, it would be very much business focused and how I run an agency, and that would be B2B. Yeah. Whereas before, I might have been selling t-shirts, etc.
So would you say that if a B2C creator, say Mr. Beast, has gone on to set up Beast Burger, the chocolate, whatever it is, would you say then could be was it Feastables? Feastables. Yeah. He could then be considered as a B2B creator as well if he was to talk on that subject matter.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to label someone like Mr. Beast or anyone really in that sense, but 100%, like, you know, if you look at Mr. Beast, he is a B2C creator, right? Yeah. Having said that, if he was to partner with a brand like Workday, and they help with the running and the operations by using that platform of the companies that he's set up, then yes, there is value within that, because he will have an audience. Obviously, his audience is vast, but he will have an audience of individuals that work in businesses and are looking for how they can enhance their offering, their services, the way they run things as well. So Mr. Beast is an example that he can probably fit into many different categories, just because of the sheer size.
Going back to something you said a minute ago around, if you've got hundreds of thousands of followers, if you were to create your own content now, it would be about your day-to-day life of running an agency.
Correct, yeah.
Where would you put that?
That's a really good question. I love that. Tables have turned. Yeah. How the turntables. It's a really good question. I've got
a few
question.
Thoughts. I think at the moment because just to chime in about how you use your own.
Well, is this for me personally, or is this for any someone that's?
I think is probably the answer's the same, isn't it? If you were to give advice to someone to set it up in that way, which platforms are you looking at right now to tell your story, build your brand in that specific way, which is a kind of a B2B concept, but it's B2C audiences would watch it.
And I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this as well. But I would say 3 platforms: Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I was going to say, obviously, I think LinkedIn is always seen as a bit of an obvious one for B2B, given that it's a kind of a B2B platform. However,
the shift
with TikTok becoming an increasingly larger search engine as opposed to a social media platform, people go into their business advice, business tips. I think Instagram would probably fall third out of the 3. But I think LinkedIn and TikTok is just such a valuable place for quick win information and like business tips and marketing tips and whatever. That's why we put clips of the show on there. I think LinkedIn and TikTok, and maybe YouTube if you're going long form, more in depth. Breaking down certain aspects of how your story. What about yourself, Matt? Where do you do that?
Well, I think based on if you're going to do daily content, and if you do lots of it, look at Snapchat. Just because of where they're going now with their creator strategy. And
it's definitely on the rise with a lot of that.
Completely shifted.
To play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
If I was to say to you, okay, Snapchat, that's an interesting one, we hadn't considered it. Audience is far too young in terms of a B2B audience. What would your response be to that?
I think you might be surprised, but it's I wouldn't say you focus on that specifically as your main platform, but if they're young, they're aspirational. So they're going to be looking up, they're looking at people that they want to kind of emulate or take inspiration from at some point. So there's that element for them. The other thing is that you can monetize Snapchat pretty well if you're active on there daily, posting a lot of content, and whether it's short videos, whether it's just images, whether it's like 20 pictures from your camera roll, because then the snap the ad. So the other platforms you mentioned you can't monetize, but Snapchat you can, and then obviously YouTube you can. So that
Creators
was one thing.
Are making a lot on Snapchat now.
Yes,
aren't they?
exactly.
It's become super popular.
And I think it was the one you said, the everyday. If I was to post content every day, a day in the life, or follow me, that's where I would be looking at. I would be including Snap in your list and not prioritizing them as number 1, but I put it in your list. LinkedIn's a great platform, right? Because everybody wants to be positive on that platform. So the engagement is always really positive. People are there to kind of support each other, gas each other up. There's a lot of boasting that goes on there, but so people want to publicly be seen to support someone who's boasting. But it's a positive place to be. So all conversations are positive. There's no trolling. There's no like abuse, really, not that I've really seen. So that all of the positivity from social that probably used to be around back in the early days, LinkedIn has all of that because it's a professional place. But you yourself, you don't change from being professional to unprofessional. You're just always you. You're just a different mindset. So that's why I think LinkedIn is such a powerful place now for this type of content, because the engagement you get is
the engagement
rich.
is much higher.
It's much higher. And also the mindset that they're in, they're either there to learn, they're there to network, they're there to, kind of follow, educate themselves or make connections or whatever. So they will, it's a great place to drive action, and where you can actually influence people to drive to do something. And what they do is positive. You're not selling them something either. You're not trying to get them to buy something. You're trying to get them to invest in themselves, to better themselves for the future. So I've just started working with a creator on bringing them more content partnership deals, should we say. And the way that we've had to position them because they're big on YouTube and they're big across other socials, but they are mainly big on YouTube, is to position them in a way that the rest of the market would be able to measure them against. So you put it into perspective. So how do they compare to TV? How do they compare to radio? How do they compare to podcasts? How do they compare to Netflix and streamers and stuff like that? And then you find like the audience stats or the insight into their audiences that you can then match up or compare to what the rest of the market is used to understanding. So you talk their language with something that is new to them, as in, like, this is generally made more for media agencies and brands directly. So you can actually show them the comparison between more traditional mediums that they're used to working in or spending with. So that's
basically a tool then to get, well, I guess, additional brand deals, so that you can, as you say, you're going to these brands and saying, okay, here's if you want to spend X amount in television, and this is if you want to spend X amount on this YouTuber, and these are the differences that you'll get, and just making it super clear, as you said, by speaking their language for it.
If you're happy to spend this much money on reaching 1 million people, well, are you happy to spend the same amount of money on reaching 10 million people?
Yeah.
With a much more engaged audience who you can measure, like we talked about before.
All right.
Do you think there's still brands that are resistant to working with digital and social media versus traditional media?
Yeah, and I've faced it for 10 years. It's like, when we first went to market, when we were Unilad, brands were very skeptical about Facebook.
Yeah.
The brand Unilad, the word lad.
Yeah.
All of this stuff, UGC content. It's all new. But the thing is, it's always going to be always new, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Probably not.
As it evolves.
It's always going to be new. So some brands, and this is where you probably need like some of the bigger creators or the more mainstream talent or the bigger institutions, the mainstream media owners, to come in and start to do the same thing, offer it in a similar way that brings in that kind of trust and credibility. So brands are, okay, yeah, we will spend here. But then on the flip side, a lot of the more youth focused brands who spend a lot on YouTube or on social, they won't spend on TV. So there's that budget the TV guys can't get, the media owners can't get. So they want to be spending on specific like creators or influencers and doing stuff that way. So it kind of probably does balance itself out, to be fair.
Yeah. And as you both said, I mean, it's always going to be new. And, if we look back at the start of our conversation now, Matt, and, branded content 9 years ago, 10 years ago, what it was to now has evolved so much. I mean, that's been a really fascinating conversation. So thank you for taking the time out of a very busy day running an agency. I know it can be busy. And I think there's so much value for our listener, and it's been awesome to have you on the couch.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me on.
Mate. Cheers.
Cheers.
Right. And that's it. Thank you so much to you for tuning in as always, and of course to our guest, Matt Ford, who helped us answer the question, what role does branded content play in today's performance-obsessed digital landscape? How do you think we did, Jake? Did we answer the question?
I think we did. I think we went pretty granular. Some very good insights for you, the listener, in that episode.
Yeah, we definitely went granular. I feel like we were geeking out on marketing in that, which was awesome. Now, look, we've got plenty more exciting episodes to come, and we've also got the backlog of great episodes for you to go and check out if you haven't already. So make sure you hit follow in your podcast app.
Yes, and as the marketing guy at Disrupt, it's, as always, my job to say that you should come and say hello if you think our agency can be of any help to you or your brand. All of our details will be in the show notes, including links to both Stevie and I on LinkedIn if you'd like to send us a little request. As always, thanks for stopping by and watching the episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.